Mischa, I'm super excited to welcome you on the Tech Recruitment podcast because you have experience with the cloud, you have experience with explaining the IT terminology in simple terms, right? You also run a YouTube channel, you have your own community on a school platform. We will talk about it later. We will also talk about all these other keywords and buzzwords that technical recruiters are exposed to. But before we get there, why don't you tell us more about your experience with recruiters? Because I'm sure you are overwhelmed with the messages on LinkedIn or elsewhere. So what is it like to be on the other side of the fence?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mikal. It's nice to be here. And yes, I'm a cloud native engineer, and I've actually transitioned my career into that from a sort of varied background or an unrelated background, you could say. I worked in management for quite a few years, and when I made the transition to IT, I was very conscious of creating a LinkedIn profile and building up an online presence. So I made myself quite visible because in a way I felt I needed that in order to stand out a bit amongst my peers. And now these days, my LinkedIn profile has almost 1,000 connections, and I have, I believe, like 1,400 followers now on LinkedIn because I do a lot of blogging and YouTubing and stuff like that. So I get quite a lot of eyes on my LinkedIn profile, and that also means that I get quite a lot of messages from recruiters who find my profile interesting. And now that I have a few years of experience, that um, um, like that, it's not only because I'm blogging and I'm very active anymore. I think I also think that other people who just have many years of experience get a lot of outreach from recruiters as well. And one of the things I noticed, like I get maybe like three to so it's sometimes five new messages a day of people wondering if I am interested in some sort of position or not. And then many of these messages, they will have some keywords in them, but it is just very clear that they haven't read my profile, right? And
Mhm.
that is, of course, because most of that stuff is automated. At least that's what I assume. That the recruiters, it's impossible to scan thousands of profiles by hand. But then, like, I'm a very Azure focused professional. And then when someone reaches out to me about an AWS focused role, yeah, then I, I
Right.
immediately just swipe away, right? Because then I like to see if someone actually read my profile. That those will be the messages that stick out to me.
Yeah, yeah. So the keywords, and there are so many of them, right? Yeah, you mentioned
Yeah,
AWS, Azure, GCP, CI/CD. I mean, we'll talk about all of
yeah.
these. But before we dive deeper, what are some of the trends and shifts that you see on the market? Because years ago there was pretty much no cloud, or I mean, it's been in
Mm.
development. Some companies have been using it, but just in the last 3, 4, 5 years, it feels like it's really booming.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the keywords and technologies that you see being more and more popular these days?
Well, the cloud is definitely still on the rise. I think most companies are now at least thinking about moving towards the cloud, or are already in the cloud or moving towards it. So it's almost unthinkable to do it without any form of cloud these days. I think there's of course still like these highly secure government operations that will have everything on-prem. That of course still happens, but the majority, I think, happens in the cloud these days. And one of the things that I noticed a couple of years ago, and which I have gone all in on, is Kubernetes. So Kubernetes and cloud native development, that is definitely on the rise. And incidentally, I did a video on that this weekend about the market trends. So they took the job postings and open vacancies and scan them for keywords. And this is I believe the website is called Cube Careers or Cube Jobs, but I think it's Cube Careers. And they make reports based on the keywords, right? And you could see that um, in two, in 2023 in North America, the number of job postings that mentioned Kubernetes had doubled in a year. So that's
Wow.
yeah, that is it
Wow.
is, and it's that also one of the fastest growing open source projects. And yeah, it's just such a good system of running stuff in the cloud that it is the future. It is the future, and it's just a pleasure to work with as well. So I can only see that rising in the
Wow.
future.
Well, that's
Yeah,
huge. It doubled in 2 years. It's just
yeah,
crazy. I mean,
yeah,
in my previous company, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, we've been using AWS cloud, and I
yeah,
mean, there were obviously companies using AWS back then, but it just feels like now more and more companies are transitioning and
yeah,
migrating their on-prem to the cloud.
yeah,
So it's interesting to see where the future or what the future will bring. So besides
absolutely.
Kubernetes, what else do you think is booming or will be booming in a few years? What should recruiters prepare for?
What recruiters should prepare for? Um, well, there is definitely a pattern that I'm noticing when watching YouTube videos, and that most of the job postings are asking for senior engineers, right? Senior engineers, but there's only a very limited amount of senior engineers. But there are lots of junior people coming out of with CS degrees, willing to work, but who won't be hired because of the requirements of seniors. And I think that gap is only going to grow in the time to come. And I think if recruiters can find some way of solving that problem somehow, I don't have the answer for you, unfortunately, but that is definitely something I see as a challenge for the coming years, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes the recruiters or hiring managers they request candidates with 5 years of experience with some technology that has been around for just 3 years.
Yeah,
Sometimes the expectations are not in line with
exactly.
reality.
Yeah, and
Well,
then if like I'm an engineer, so I'm not very familiar with the recruiting world. But if, say, a recruiter could play a role in, if a recruiter finds someone who is truly passionate, right? They have kept this blog for 2 years and they have a Kubernetes cluster at home with 10 nodes, and
mm,
like you know that's a good guy. If the recruiter then can at least uh, liaison with the hiring manager and say, look, this guy is good. He might not have the 5 years you're requesting, but he knows his stuff. You can see it on the internet. And I think that can be a good recruiter can definitely help a lot of people in that way, I think.
yeah, yeah, awesome. And by the way, now we are talking about all of these keywords like Azure and Kubernetes
Yeah,
and DevOps and Docker. But why don't we take a moment to explain actually some of these terms to fellow recruiters because they
yeah.
also may visit candidates' profiles and see Kubernetes being mentioned on profiles or resumes and still not really know what do these terms mean. So, since you also run this school and the community, I think you'll be really well, prepared to answer this question. What is Kubernetes actually?
What
Uh,
Kubernetes is, yes, yes. So as you mentioned, the school community is something I started. I have a YouTube channel, and I always wanted to create courses. So then I created a school community, and it's not just me publishing courses, but then the people subscribe. They can also have a community around those courses. So there's a message board and everybody's asking each other questions. And we have weekly events where we talk. So it's a very nice way to connect with fellow like-minded learners. And for the community, I'm also now currently creating a Kubernetes fundamentals course. So I've just been working on that for the last few weeks. And yeah, Kubernetes is going to be difficult to explain to a person who has like zero technical experience, but I'm going to try. So back in the day, we would have servers in a data center, and now that is all happening in the cloud, which is basically just Microsoft having this huge server park with servers there, and then you can rent a little piece from that. So far, so good. That is what Microsoft Azure is. That is the cloud. But in order to run in the cloud, you can either use virtual machines or containers. And containers is basically the new iteration of that. And to run containers very efficiently, you need some sort of intelligence system to do that. To like you can tell Kubernetes, I want 10 replicas of this application, of this version, running at all times. And then you have 10 of them, but sooner or later, one of them is going to go down. And then Kubernetes is going to see that, and it's going to delete the old one and spin a new one. And if I have 10 instances of my application and I want to deploy a new version of my application, then it's going to go through these one by one and update the version. And if one goes wrong, then the update stops. So Kubernetes is a very beautiful, intelligent system to manage these containers and these applications for you. That's, I think, the most concise, simple way
Mhm.
I can explain it.
Awesome, awesome. Totally makes sense. I mean, it's connected with containers, right? And
Yeah,
Docker is somehow connected with containers,
yeah,
from what I recall, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So before you would always, instead of a server, you would have a virtual machine. So the server, the actual machine, would be cut up in certain virtual machines. And but each virtual machine still needs its own full operating system. It still needs, there's a lot of overhead involved with that. And when containerization came along, you abstract away that operating system layer. And it basically means that on the same infrastructure, you can run those workloads much more efficiently. And that's what containerization does. And it makes it much easier to scale those applications across many different servers that you have.
Awesome, awesome. And how does CI and CD fit into all of this?
CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous deployment. So a developer is writing code at his laptop, but that the code that he writes needs to be validated whether it's actually secure, or that that what he's doing is actually going to be compatible with what is already out there, for example. And for that, you can create a pipeline. So the developer will submit his code, he checks it into Git or version control, and then there is an automation in place that will scan the code for security vulnerabilities. And then it will take that code and package it to a container. What I just described was the continuous integration part. And then it will package it into a container and then move it, for example, to Kubernetes for deployment. And that is the continuous deployment part of a pipeline.
So, well, that sounds so easy now, and this
Yeah,
is usually the most difficult part for technical recruiters to understand. The
yeah.
CI/CD, DevOps, containers, Kubernetes. So it's also that you are able to explain it in this easy to understand language. What are some other technical terms that you keep seeing on the candidates' profiles?
Um, well, there is cloud, Kubernetes, cloud native, those we talked about. Well, definitely infrastructure as code. That is
Mhm.
definitely one that is one to be very aware of. And um, what infrastructure as code is the stuff that you deploy in the cloud, that's the infrastructure, and that can be virtual machines, but also other managed services. Like in Azure, you have virtual desktops, for example, or you have machine learning workspaces, like all of these managed services. But with infrastructure as code, you can sort of describe those things in code, and then you can say, I want this resource with that configuration placed in this region with that name. And you can put that in code, and then you just roll that out to the cloud platform, and then the cloud platform will deploy that for you. But the great thing about this is that you can then reproduce it, right? You can reproduce what you have done before, but with a different name. Or say you have this entire environment of services in the West Europe region. Well, now we also want to replicate that to North Europe. And you can do that in code by just switching the variable to North Europe, right? Instead of clicking everything. Because there's two ways of doing it. You can either do the graphical user interface in the web browser, and you can click the menu and create something, and then that works. But then it's just living there in the cloud. But if you have it as code, then you can reproduce it, or you can change it from the code. And the biggest benefit of that is that you can also have a team member look at your code. You can say, I'm about to deploy this. Does this look right to you? And then sometimes it doesn't, right? So that is what infrastructure as code does. And it's very important in the life of a cloud/DevOps engineer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sounds so good, right? So much better than just clicking on the screen, all these
Yeah,
buttons, and I can imagine how prone to error the manual clicking is versus the
yeah,
infrastructure as code, which could be tested and verified by peer reviews.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
so then, would you say that now all the cloud engineers use infrastructure as code? Like, is this the new standard and the way to do the cloud engineering?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, sadly, there are environments out there where this is not implemented and where everything is still being clicked. Or what you also sometimes see is that they do it from infrastructure as code, but then the teams or the operations people make changes in the portal, and then the code is not compatible with what's out there anymore. So there's
Mhm.
no way of enforcing that. And then you get this huge technical debt. So
Mhm.
then there were good intentions, but then it sort of, yeah,
Mhm.
escalated, and then it doesn't really work anymore, right? So there are definitely dangers to it too.
So
So you have
well,
to be very disciplined about it. Yeah,
that sucks if some people write code and then others override the changes with the
yeah,
console. That's
yeah,
unfortunate.
exactly.
And the other term that a lot of recruiters may encounter is called the Terraform, right? And
Yeah.
it's connected with infrastructure as code. So what does that mean?
Well, what I just described is the concept of infrastructure as code. And then Terraform is one implementation of that. So Terraform is developed by HashiCorp, and the Terraform is basically a tool and a language to create infrastructure as code. And it is mainly focused towards Amazon Web Services, the cloud, but it also has providers for many other things, many other many other things, such as Azure. Microsoft Azure also has an official. It is still open source, but it does have a supported resource provider. And but also, for example, Grafana Cloud. You can provision Grafana infrastructure with Terraform, right? So there's many things you can do with Terraform as well.
That's interesting. That's interesting how kind of now everything is being coded and the code is being written. Also, now with the generative AI, can the AI
Yep.
just write code instead of cloud engineers? Like, where is this heading actually?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like there is a lot of talk that there won't be any software engineers or cloud engineers in the future, and I use ChatGPT quite a lot in my daily life as well. It certainly makes things easier, but if you ask it something larger than one single isolated case, up until now, I have not been very impressed with the results. I definitely see potential in it, and for sure it is going to only increase. But I I I don't see it replacing cloud engineers as such
Mm. Yeah,
in any
just
time
yet.
soon. Yeah,
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. So
yeah.
cloud engineers are here to stay. What are some other roles that are part of the cloud team?
Well, it depends a lot where you are working. Like I've been in teams where we were more like a platform team. So then you are responsible for the entire cloud platform for a large organization, and then all of the development teams, they come and sort of buy their infrastructure from you, right? They just say, I want my application, here it is, please deploy it to the cloud. But there are also like more of a DevOps way of working would be to have an application team, and then there is a DevOps engineer in that team who is then in charge of that side of things, right? He and then he would be or she the person to handle that kind of things, while and very likely also being doing development work, right? So it would be his specialization, but then he could also be contributing in other ways. So there's two ways of doing it. And yeah, then there's always, of course, if you're working in agile environments, there's the product manager and the scrum master and these kinds of roles as well.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. So coming back to the let's say cloud engineer versus platform engineer, do you see any difference in what they do, or is it pretty much the same person just with a different title?
Yeah, it depends a lot on where you are. I mean, you technically you can be a platform engineer and not work in the cloud. So if you are running a if you're working in a large enterprise and they have their entire infrastructure on-prem, so they don't do it in the cloud. Well, but they have their own Kubernetes clusters and their own ways of deployment. Well, then technically you are a platform engineer and you're not working in the cloud. Whereas a cloud engineer obviously is, of course, going to work fully in the cloud and in Azure
Mhm.
or Amazon Web Services.
And do you see those cloud engineers specialize in one of those clouds? Because the certifications are often specific to each cloud. So do those cloud engineers, based on your experience, also just choose one and stick to that one specific cloud?
Well, um, I did that because in the beginning, when I got into this, I tried definitely to keep up with all of them, and I wanted to learn all of them, and I wanted to because I wanted to be a as employable as possible, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
I quickly realized it's quite impossible to keep track of
Mm-hmm.
all the changes that are happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a very conscious decision to just focus on one cloud and get good at that. And then I will maybe eventually branch out to a different one. And I'm from what I've seen now and from what I'm told is that if you know one cloud well, then it's just a matter of translating the names, right? The concepts are still the same, but even that can be quite a process because there's just such a huge vocabulary within that cloud ecosystem that you'll have to relearn. But the concepts are the same, I'm told.
And there are so many different solutions with each cloud, right? Just Amazon cloud has what 250 different products or
Yep.
solutions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this
Yeah.
itself is too huge to know, not even three, four different clouds. But
Yeah, exactly.
I would be quite interested in learning a bit more about how did you actually decide which cloud to go for? Because there are three
Hmm.
clouds, four clouds, the bigger ones, and then 10 smaller ones probably. So
Yeah.
you chose Azure, right? Microsoft Azure.
Yes, I chose Azure, and it is partially a very conscious decision, but on the other hand, it is also basically how my trajectory went. Like my first junior position, I was managing on-prem Linux machines, and we were in the process of moving to Azure. So obviously, I was going to get quite a lot of certifications in Azure, and I yeah, that's the one that I was learning. And I quite liked it. I liked the UI, and I liked the tooling around it, and I really liked that Microsoft has all of their documentation available for free. So anybody, also recruiters, can go in there and educate themselves for free, and I really like that. And I'm not even sure. I think these days Amazon also does that, but I really like that about the platform. And then, yeah, after working with it for a while, I kind of stayed. But also, the second part of it is that here in the Netherlands, where I live, um, Microsoft has a data center here in the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, it's going to be a very obvious choice for in terms of data sovereignty. So governmental agencies are almost never allowed to have their data hosted outside of the country. And then if you are the only cloud provider in the country with a data center there, well, where are they going to go to, right? So that was one of the reasons why I went all in on Azure. And also, I just really like what Microsoft is doing with open sourcing everything and their developments in AI as well.
So wonderful. So speaking of the local data center, is there any local community, and probably not just in the Netherlands, but some online community then that you are part of?
Well, there is definitely like Microsoft has their MVP program, right? So they're the most valued professional, and those MVPs are always organizing meetups, and there are quite a lot of um, what do you call them, like events happening. There is Azure Lowlands. That was a very nice event, was just completely Azure and all like a full day of talks. And yeah, the Netherlands is there's a very large IT market. So there's a lot of stuff happening here. It's very international as well. So I am actually a co-organizer of one meetup, and I have a few MVP friends. So there's quite a lot happening, and I'm now in a Microsoft focused company as well. So there is, yeah, I feel like I'm part of a community around that, certainly. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how it works when a recruiter joins the event that you organize? What is the kind of general sentiment when you see recruiters around? Is it more like kind of welcome here, or is like, oh, you are a recruiter, so don't bother us being here?
Ah, interesting question. Like I'm not very much engaged in the in-person events myself. I do a lot of online, obviously. Um, And but the few meetups I have been, I can't say I have noticed recruiters there. Maybe they were there, but it was mostly just sweaty guys with beards
Mhm.
and nerds like me who were attending a presentation on in their free time, right? So uh, yeah, I don't have much experience with that actually,
Yeah.
and but I can, like, if a recruiter comes there to educate themselves, and I think that that's only embraced, of course. But
Mhm.
I'm not sure how I would react if someone would very directly come to me and, hey, are you looking for a job? Or if you are, you probably you
Awesome.
do it a bit more tactically than that. But yeah,
Yeah. And these days now, when people meet in person, it's getting a bit awkward, right? Especially after
Yeah,
COVID.
yeah,
That is
yeah, yeah,
human touch, it's
yeah,
but maybe it will circle back after some time when people will be sick and tired of the online events, right? And
yeah.
online.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
And speaking of these online events, are there any other online communities, like I don't know, on Slack or somewhere where you kind of you are present or you know of that also have some job boards or where recruiters can meet a fellow cloud practitioner?
Well, I myself, like apart from my own school community that I started, there is I, I spent a lot of time on Reddit. So there
Mhm.
are on Reddit there are a few very good Reddits on Kubernetes and DevOps and even more niche down topics like that too. Those can be great places to learn, but also to see what is happening, right? So in the DevOps Reddit, you can read a lot of stories of people who have been sending a few hundred applications and not being able to get in, or to only not even get an interview.
Mhm.
So yeah, if you read those stories, then I think, yeah, I'm not sure if it's even allowed to recruit on those forums, but at least you can get a sense of what's happening in the market.
Yeah.
And yeah, what I think, like on Reddit, it's very big, right? There's a lot of people there, and when I started my school community, people were saying that it sort of brought them back to the old internet forum days, because it's
Mhm.
a very small group and everybody is there with their own profile picture. And I'm sure there are smaller communities out there, but you'll just have to search for them, I suppose.
Mhm.
But I think those can be the best ones to really get in touch with the engineers and to see what their pain points are.
Yeah. To build relationships as well, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, yeah, there are just so many opportunities out there. So many companies are looking for cloud engineers. In the
Yeah.
Netherlands, it seems to be booming as well.
Mm.
Are there any job boards that you visit or you know of that are specific to cloud engineering?
Job boards. Well, the thing is, Michael, that like I feel so privileged saying this, but when you get into the industry and then you when you have the experience and you're sort of proven yourself that you're a capable engineer, then it's not really necessary for me to visit job boards anymore, right? Like I'm not sort of applying to jobs. It's more that well, I'm very happy currently where I am, but then you get approached for something and that looks interesting, and then maybe you have a conversation with someone. But yeah, I personally would. I'm not looking at jobs anymore. Everything happens on LinkedIn, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just so good that you say it because it is also this way from the recruiter's standpoint. I mean, we kind of feel that the job boards are visited by people who are probably not the most qualified candidates out there,
yeah,
or the most desperate candidates right now, and they may not be the best fit for the role.
yeah,
But we often need to approach people either on LinkedIn or by email or call them or on meetups, or
yeah,
find them where, dig holes or whatever,
yeah,
just to those kind of days.
yeah. And I mean, like I started out on a job board, right? That's also when I changed my career. A recruiter found me on a job board, so there is
Mhm.
definitely um, you can find gems there. And like I'm not trying to say that I'm such a gem, but I did turn out to be a success. And I think this is also where um, like a good recruiter will be able to spot someone who is really passionate about their work. And I think that's the most important thing. Like multiple CEOs and hiring managers have told me that the tech stuff is like if you have a few certs, you have proven that you can learn it, then that's fine. But what they're really searching for is someone who is passionate about their work, who
Mm,
loves what they do, because who doesn't want to work with someone that is passionate, right? That
mm,
brings energy to the team, and you don't necessarily have to have a computer science degree to have that. If someone is willing to learn and able to learn, and being pleasant to work with and having good social skills, then that is yeah, that's all you need, basically, in my opinion.
mm. But this
So,
actually comes with another question then, like how can we spot who is passionate about cloud? Because, to a
yeah.
lot of people out there, it may sound so boring. I mean, like, spin off some instances and manage
Yeah.
load and deploy a new container. Like, how can someone be passionate about this? Some people can think. So,
Well,
so
yeah.
how would you identify if a candidate is passionate and excited about this?
Well, the like I'll maybe the best way to illustrate it is to tell my own story very shortly. But like don't have an IT background. I was working in management, but ever since I was a kid, I was a video gamer. And then when I was about 16, I figured out you can automate these games. So I was writing scripts to automate the role-playing games I was doing. Well, 10 years later, this sort of escalated, and I was having multiple servers in Germany somewhere that ran a few hundred of these bots, all playing these
Um,
games for me. And then the in-game currency that they were creating, I earned a bit of money from that, like not much, but I was doing that all of my in my free time because I loved it so much. And that's also why I decided to change my career, because I felt, yeah, I'm always doing this. It's giving me so much pleasure. I should make my career out of this. And that turned out very well for me. So, what you need to look for is what is someone doing in their free time? Like in me, if someone is actually willing to give up all their free time and work in the cloud because they love automation and coding so much, well,
mm,
in hindsight, like looking back at myself, like I was quite an obvious candidate, really. And I also didn't struggle very much to find my first position. So that's one thing. And also, in these days of the internet, like one of the smartest things I did when I made changed my career was to start a blog. And I was constantly just writing about what I was learning, what I was doing, documenting my own journey. And I also think that is a very good sign if someone is actually actively blogging about what they do and turning that into writing to share with others. Uh, then you have someone on your hands who is very passionate about what they do, I think.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good advice for recruiters out
Yeah.
there to someone who is passionate. Wonderful, wonderful, cool. Awesome. Okay. So not to take also too much of your time now with everything, because I'm sure you have a lot of writing to do and manage your
Yeah.
school community as well. So
Yeah.
where can people connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Well, speaking of blogs, I have a blog, my own blog. The link will probably be down below, I hope, Michael.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's mischavandenberg.com. So there I write about the stuff that I do, the technical stuff. I have a YouTube channel, Mischa Vandenberg, where I make technical videos about the stuff that I do, about my home lab, about the stuff I'm learning and sharing back to the community. And finally, I have a school community where I create courses. This is open to anyone, but it is it is a subscription-based community, and I create courses. But I also gather people there who are really passionate about what they do, and it's something really beautiful is happening there, because you see juniors coming in asking advice to the seniors, and you can really see people grow there. And I have my courses there, so it's a very, very cool thing that's happening there. So check it
Mhm.
out.
Nice, nice. So it may be also worth for recruiters to check it out, just to see what the community is about and what they probably do. Learn more from the courses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can learn from the courses, and yeah, I want to keep it a safe place for the engineers. So I'm currently not allowing sort of active recruiting in there. But if you, I think it can be very valuable for a recruiter to see the people having interaction with each other. What are they talking about? What are they struggling with? Because people are asking about career advice, and we are giving it to them. So I think that can definitely be a resource to read for sure.
Wonderful, awesome, great. So I'll include the links in the show notes and on YouTube in the description. Wonderful. Well, thanks a lot for sharing your insights and explaining some of the technical buzzwords and the IT jargon. So I'm
Yeah,
sure a lot of recruiters benefit from it.
excellent. Well, thank you, Michael. Thanks for reaching out to me, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll
Well,
see you some next time.
yeah, definitely. We'll keep in touch. Thank you. Have a
Let's keep
wonderful
in
day.
touch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Bye.